Listen carefully. By the time you hit 30, your future is already being shaped by the books you read, the habits you repeat, and the standards you refuse to lower. Ambitious people do not drift into success. They build it early, deliberately, and relentlessly. This audiobook is not here to entertain you. It is here to rewire how you think about money, discipline, focus, people, and power. 10 books, 10 lessons, 1 mission. Make you harder to ignore. Chapter 1. Stop waiting for money to teach you. Money is not the lesson. Money is the test. And too many people fail it because they wait until they are broke, stressed, and trapped before they learn what money is actually for. That is the first mistake. You have a choice. You can spend your life working for money, or you can make money work for you. That is the difference. That's the key. Not luck, not talent, not wishful thinking. The difference is understanding the game before the game exposes you. Rich Dad, Poor Dad forces you to confront a truth most people avoid. A salary is not freedom. A salary is survival. A salary can keep you comfortable. It can keep you busy. It can even keep you proud, but it does not automatically make you free. And if you never learn the difference between assets and liabilities, you will keep earning more and keeping less. That is how people stay trapped even while they look successful. Look around. One person gets paid and immediately spends on status, new phone, new clothes, new car, new image. They want to look rich, but looking rich is expensive. Looking rich is a trap. It drains cash, creates pressure, and builds nothing. Another person gets paid and asks a different question. What can this money buy that will make more money? What can this money build? What can this money protect? That person is not trying to impress people. That person is trying to escape dependence. Do not look rich, become rich. That means assets. That means ownership. That means cash flow. That means learning to value what produces income instead of what only produces applause. Cash flow matters. Ownership matters. Cash flow matters. Ownership matters. Say it again. Cash flow matters. Ownership matters. Because a house you live in may feel good, but if it costs you money every month, it is not making you free. A car may feel powerful, but if it only drains your account, it is not power. A business, a skill, an investment, a product, a system, those can become assets if they return value. That's the key. You have a choice every time money enters your hands. Spend it to perform or use it to build. Waste it on image or assign it a job. Most people never give their money a job. They just let it disappear. They call it living. It is not living. It is leaking. Here's the real-world truth. The person who buys status symbols often needs a bigger salary just to maintain the illusion. The person who buys skills can increase earning power. The person who buys assets can create income. The person who buys opportunity can multiply results. One path looks good for a moment. The other path builds a future. You do not need their permission to start thinking differently. You do not need friends to understand it. You do not need family approval to learn financial discipline. You need to wake up. You need to stop confusing consumption with progress. You need to stop clapping for yourself because you got paid, when the real question is, what did you keep, what did you build, and what will continue paying you later? That's the key. Ambition without money discipline is noisy. It looks motivated. It sounds confident, but it is empty. The ambitious person who wins is the one who learns early. Learn what assets are. Learn what liabilities are. Learn how money moves. Learn how to own. Learn how to grow. Learn how to keep cash working after the paycheck stops. This is not about being cheap. It's not about fear. It's about discipline. It's not about greed. It's about structure. It's not about chasing more money for ego. It's about building a life that does not collapse every time income pauses. So start now. Track your money. Buy wisely. Save with purpose. Invest in things that can grow. Build income streams. Learn the game. The world will not teach you gently. It will teach you through pressure if you refuse to learn early. And when you finally understand that cash flow matters, ownership matters, and looking rich is not the same as being rich, you begin to move differently. You become harder to control, harder to distract, harder to break. You have mastered the first lesson. Money is a tool, not a trophy. Now let's go deeper into the power of small daily actions.
Chapter 2. Small Actions Create Big Lives. Ambition without systems is chaos. Ambition without habits is noise. Ambition without repetition is just fantasy. That is the truth this chapter forces you to face. You do not become great in one dramatic moment. You become great by what you repeat. That is the key. What you repeat becomes your life. What you repeat becomes your identity. What you repeat becomes your future. You have a choice every day. You can chase motivation, or you can build systems. And systems beat goals. That is what Atomic Habits teaches at a deeper level. Not just that habits matter. Everyone knows that. The real lesson is that small actions compound. Small actions stack. Small actions shape identity. You do not rise to the level of your dreams. You fall to the level of your systems. That is the part people ignore. They talk big, they plan big, they feel big, but they do not repeat small disciplines long enough for the results to show. That's the key. A successful life is not created by one huge effort. It is created by 1,000 tiny decisions that look ordinary in the moment. Read 10 pages, do one workout, drink water, wake up on time, write 1 page, save a little money, review your goals, track your progress. These are not glamorous actions, but they are powerful actions, because power is not always loud. Sometimes power is boring. Sometimes power is repeated. Sometimes power is hidden in daily consistency. You don't need their permission to become disciplined. You don't need applause to build a better life. You do not need to feel inspired every morning. You need structure. You need rhythm. You need a system that keeps moving, even when your feelings are lazy. That's the difference between people who change and people who stay stuck. Look at the person who reads 10 pages every day. At first, it feels small, almost too small. But after a month, they have read hundreds of pages. After a year, they have changed the way they think. They see more. They understand more. They speak with more clarity. They make better decisions. That is identity driving behavior. That is the real transformation. Look at the person who works out daily. Not perfectly, not dramatically, just consistently. At first, it looks like nothing. Then their energy changes, their body changes, their confidence changes, their standards change. They stop negotiating with weakness. They stop living like comfort is the boss. What they repeat, they become. Look at the person who tracks progress. They are not guessing. They are not drifting. They know what is working. They know what is failing. They can correct faster than everyone else. That is how systems win. Systems beat goals. Systems beat mood. Systems beat excuses. Systems beat waiting. It's not about talent. It's about discipline. It's not about intensity. It's about repetition. It's not about doing everything today. It's about doing something every day. Say it again. Systems beat goals. Identity drives behavior. What you repeat is what you become. Because the truth is, most people do not fail from lack of ambition. They fail from lack of structure. They wait to feel ready. They wait to feel motivated. They wait to feel strong. But life does not wait. Life responds to action, not intention. Your future is not built by what you plan. It is built by what you practice. So start small, but do not stay small. Build a routine. Protect it. Repeat it. Make it non-negotiable. If you miss a day, return immediately. If you fall off, do not dramatize it. Reset. Continue. Repetition is the path. Consistency is the weapon. This is how ambitious people win early, not by doing the most, by doing the right things over and over until those actions become identity. You have a choice. Keep chasing motivation and staying unpredictable, or build systems that make progress automatic. That is the real advantage. That is the real discipline. And once you understand that small actions create big lives, you stop looking for shortcuts and start building momentum. That is how the book becomes useful. That is how the lesson becomes real. Now let's go to the next level.
Chapter 3. Take responsibility or stay stuck. Blame is comfortable. Responsibility is powerful. That is the split. That is the decision. That is the line most people never cross. If you keep blaming timing, your parents, your boss, your city, your background, or your luck, you stay stuck. Not because the world is perfect. The world is not perfect, but because blame keeps you passive. Responsibility makes you dangerous. That is the key. You have a choice. You can explain your life, or you can improve your life. You cannot do both forever. The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People starts with a truth that ambitious people need early. Be proactive, not reactive. Proactive means you decide before the pressure decides for you. Proactive means you think ahead. Proactive means you choose your response. Reactive people wait for life to hit them, then they complain. Proactive people see the hit coming, prepare, adjust, and move. That is maturity. And maturity is not age. Maturity is ownership. You own your outcome. You own your effort. You own your standards. You own your results. You do not own every circumstance, but you do own your response. That's the key. Look at 2 people with the same problem. One says, "My boss does not appreciate me." The other says, "What skill do I need to become undeniable?" One complains, one upgrades. One is waiting for the environment to change. The other is changing themselves. You have a choice. That is how life separates people, not by what happens to them, by what they do next. A reactive person spends all day talking about what went wrong. They are always late because traffic. They are always broke because of the economy. They are always angry because people are difficult. They have a reason for everything and a solution for nothing. That is not strength. That is surrender dressed as conversation. A proactive person does not waste energy worshiping the problem. They ask, "What can I control?" That question changes everything. It changes your habits. It changes your schedule. It changes your income. It changes your future. You do not need their permission to get better. You do not need their approval to become disciplined. You need to take responsibility. Own your outcome. Own your outcome. Own your outcome. Say it until it sinks in, because the truth is simple. The moment you stop blaming, you start building. The moment you stop complaining, you start creating. The moment you stop making excuses, you start making progress. Here's the practical instruction. Start your day by deciding what matters before the world starts demanding your attention. Set your priorities, not your moods, your priorities. Write down the 3 most important things you must complete. Do them first. Not the easiest things, the most important things. That is proactive living. That is discipline. That is control. Then examine your language. Every time you say, "I can't because," stop. Replace it with, "What can I do?" Every time you say, "They made me," stop. Replace it with, "I chose." Every time you say, "That's just how I am," stop. Replace it with that can change, because it can. You are not trapped by identity. You are shaped by repetition, and repetition can be rewired. It's not about pressure. It's about discipline. It's not about luck. It's about discipline. It's not about who helped you first. It's about discipline. That's the point. Discipline turns responsibility into progress. Responsibility turns chaos into direction. Direction turns effort into results. Do not wait for perfect conditions. Do not wait for a breakthrough mood. Do not wait for someone to save you. Be proactive. Choose your response. Own your outcome. That is how ambitious people move. That is how they stay dangerous. That is how they stop drifting and start leading their own lives. You have a choice. Stay reactive and remain stuck in the story of what went wrong, or become proactive and write a better story with your decisions. That's the lesson. That's the standard. That's the work. And once you understand responsibility, you stop acting like life is happening to you and start acting like life is responding to you. That is how you build momentum. That is how you build freedom. Now, let's move forward.
Chapter 4. Desire means nothing without obedience. Desire is not enough. Wanting something is not enough. Dreaming about it is not enough. Talking about it is not enough. You can want success with all your heart and still remain exactly where you are if desire never turns into obedience. That is the lesson here. That is the hard truth. You have a choice. You can admire your goals from a distance, or you can obey the work required to reach them. That's the key. Think and Grow Rich does not reward fantasy. It rewards focus. It rewards persistence. It rewards a mind that stays locked on the target long after excitement fades. Most people want the result. Very few want the repetition. Very few want the sacrifice. Very few want to keep moving when it is boring, slow, frustrating, and uncomfortable. Want it badly, but want it in a useful way. Wanted badly enough to build, wanted badly enough to learn, wanted badly enough to keep showing up when nobody is cheering. Because desire without action is just emotional entertainment. It feels powerful, but it produces nothing. You do not get paid for wishing. You get paid for what you repeat. That's the key. A lot of people say they want success, but what they really want is the feeling of being successful. They want the image, the praise, the story. They want to be seen as ambitious, but real ambition is not performance. Real ambition is obedience. It is doing the work before the applause. It is staying committed after the excitement dies. It is keeping your word to yourself when nobody else is checking. You don't need their permission to start. You don't need their permission to keep going. You don't need their permission to fail, adjust, and try again. You need discipline. You need decision. You need movement. Look at the ambitious person who keeps applying, keeps building, keeps learning, keeps sending the proposal, keeps improving the pitch, keeps refining the skill, keeps showing up. The first few attempts may fail. The next few may fail too, but they are not quitting at the first sign of resistance. They are not calling it impossible because it got hard. They are not confusing delay with denial. They persist longer. That is the advantage. The person who wins is often not the most talented. It is the person who keeps moving until it becomes real. That is the difference. That is the line. One person stops when motivation disappears. The other keeps working when motivation disappears. One person talks about the dream. The other builds it in silence. One person wants the reward. The other wants the responsibility that creates the reward. It's not about enthusiasm. It's about discipline. It's not about excitement. It's about discipline. It's not about saying someday. It's about discipline. Say it again. Keep moving until it becomes real. Keep moving until it becomes real. Keep moving until it becomes real. because vision only becomes reality when action keeps touching it. Desire must be fed with repetition. Desire must be backed by structure. Desire must survive discomfort. That is why so many people fail. They mistake emotional intensity for commitment. They mistake a strong wish for a strong work ethic. They are not the same thing. If you want the result, obey the process. If you want the future, obey the present. If you want the life, obey the habits that create the life. That's the key. So start where you are. Write the goal. Break it down. Take one step, then another, then another. Stop waiting to feel ready. Stop waiting for certainty. Stop waiting for perfect conditions. Build while uncertain. Learn while moving. Improve while failing. That is how success is made real. You have a choice. You can keep admiring your dream from a distance, or you can become the kind of person who obeys the work long enough for the dream to materialize. That is what separates dreamers from builders. That is what separates the hopeful from the relentless. And when you understand that desire means nothing without obedience, you stop being impressed by your own intentions and start respecting your own actions. That is how ambition becomes something real. That is how the book stays alive in your life. Now let's go further.
Chapter 5. Protect your focus like it is your future. Focus is not optional anymore. It is rare. It is valuable. It is powerful. And in a world built on noise, distraction, alerts, and endless interruption, focus is a weapon. That is the truth. That is the advantage. That is the difference between the people who stay average and the people who create extraordinary results. You have a choice. You can let the world pull your attention in 10 different directions, or you can protect your mind like it is your future, because it is. Attention is currency. Where your attention goes, your life follows. That's the key. Deep work makes one thing painfully clear. Shallow effort will keep you busy, but deep effort will make you valuable. A distracted person may look active, they may look responsive, they may look involved, but they are not necessarily producing anything meaningful. They are reacting, they are scrolling, they are checking, they are jumping. They are breaking their own concentration into pieces and then wondering why their work does not stand out. Deep work creates leverage. Say it again. Deep work creates leverage, not just output, leverage, meaning, weight, value. The kind of work that changes how people see you. The kind of work that compounds. The kind of work that makes your time more expensive because your focus has become rare. A student who studies with full concentration for 1 hour will often outperform the student who studies for 4 hours while checking messages every 10 minutes. A creator who writes, edits, and builds in a locked-in state will produce work that feels sharper, cleaner, and stronger than the person who keeps stopping for distractions. A professional who protects a block of deep work will solve problems faster, think clearer, and deliver better results than the one who stays constantly available and mentally scattered. That is the contrast. Shallow effort gives you motion. Deep effort gives you mastery. You don't need their permission to focus. You don't need to answer every message immediately. You do not need to be reachable every second to prove your value. In fact, the more reachable you become, the breakable you become, and breakable people do not build remarkable lives. This is not about being busy. It is about being disciplined. It's not about doing more. It's about doing deeper. It's not about responding faster. It's about concentrating longer. It's not about noise. It's about discipline. That's the key. So what do? You block time. You create silence. You remove distractions before they remove your future. Put the phone away. Turn off alerts. Close the tabs. Stop pretending multitasking is intelligence. It is not. It is fragmentation, and fragmentation kills quality. Begin with one protected block of work every day. Not when you feel ready, not when life gets calmer, every day. Train your brain to stay in one place long enough to make something real. Read without interruption. Write without interruption. Build without interruption. Solve without interruption. That is how focus becomes a skill instead of a hope. You have a choice. You can spend your day half thinking, half working, half living, and then call yourself productive. Or you can become dangerous with your attention. You can become the kind of person who sits down and finishes, the kind of person who ignores noise, the kind of person who creates in depth while everyone else is drowning in distraction. Focus is a weapon. Attention is currency. Deep work creates leverage. Repeat those lines until they stop sounding like advice and start sounding like law. Because the modern world does not reward the most distracted person. It rewards the person who can think, the person who can stay, the person who can go deep while everyone else stays shallow. That is how reputations are built. That is how skill is sharpened. That is how ambitious people move ahead. Protect your focus like it is your future, because it is. And once you understand that attention is the real currency of your life, you stop wasting it on noise and start investing it in mastery. That is how power is built. That is how excellence is built. That is how the book becomes real. Now, let's move to the next lesson.
Chapter 6. People buy confidence before they buy your ideas. Talent is not enough. Skill is not enough. Brilliance is not enough. If people do not trust you, they do not follow you. If they do not feel respected, they do not listen. If they do not feel understood, they do not open doors for you. That is the truth. That is the lesson. That is the advantage most ambitious people ignore. You have a choice. You can keep trying to impress people, or you can learn people. That's the key. How to win friends and influence people is not really about being fake. It is about being effective. It is about understanding that success is rarely solo. People matter. Relationships matter. Trust matters. And influence begins with care. Say that again. Influence begins with care. Not with arrogance, not with proving yourself, not with talking over everyone else. It begins with care. It begins with listening. It begins with attention. It begins with making people feel seen instead of managed. Most people think confidence is loud. It is not. Real confidence is steady. It does not need to dominate the room. It does not need to win every argument. It does not need to correct every person. Real confidence makes other people feel safe enough to connect. That is powerful. That's the key. Learn people. Learn what they value. Learn what they fear. Learn what they pay attention to. Learn how to make them feel respected. Learn how to ask better questions. Learn how to listen without preparing your response. That is how trust is built. And trust is more valuable than talent when the room is deciding who gets the opportunity. A brilliant but arrogant person often loses to a polite, emotionally intelligent person. Why? Because people do not only invest in ability, they invest in energy, they invest in character, they invest in how you make them feel. A real-world example is simple. One person walks into a room and starts proving how smart they are. They interrupt, they correct, they speak like every conversation is a competition. They may be intelligent, but they are hard to work with. The other person walks in calm, respectful, and attentive. They listen first. They remember names. They ask thoughtful questions. They make people feel valued. Guess who gets invited back? Guess who gets the call? Guess who gets the recommendation? The answer is obvious. Build trust. Build trust. Build trust. Because trust is what turns a conversation into an opportunity. Trust is what turns a contact into a connection. Trust is what turns a relationship into a bridge, and bridges matter. Bridges move people forward. You do not need their permission to become better with people. You do not need to be naturally charismatic. You do not need to be the loudest voice in the room. You need discipline. You need presence. You need to stop treating every interaction like a chance to prove your worth. Your worth is not proven by talking more. It is proven by connecting well. It's not about being the smartest person. It's about discipline. It's not about winning every conversation. It's about discipline. It's not about being impressive. It's about discipline. That's the key. Listen more than you speak. Respect more than you react. Learn more than you perform. Those habits are not soft. They are strategic. They help you lead without forcing. They help you influence without pressure. They help you move through life with people instead of against them. And here's the hard truth. People will remember how you made them feel long before they remember your resume. They will remember whether you listened. They will remember whether you were kind. They will remember whether you gave them dignity. That memory becomes reputation. Reputation becomes access. Access becomes opportunity. So stop trying to impress everyone with your intelligence. Start building trust with your behavior. Start learning people. Start respecting people. Start speaking in a way that opens doors instead of closing them. You have a choice. Be the person who demands attention and loses connection, or be the person who builds trust and wins influence. That's the difference. That's the leverage. That's the discipline. And when you understand that people skills are strategic, you stop treating relationships like an accident and start treating them like an asset. That's how power works in the real world. That's how ambitious people move forward. Now let's go deeper into the mind behind every financial decision.
Money does not reward the loudest person. It does not reward the flashiest person. It does not reward the smartest sounding person in the room. Money rewards behavior. That is the lesson. That is the key. That is the truth most people learn too late. The psychology of money makes one thing very clear. Financial success is far more about how you behave than how much you know. You can be intelligent and still go broke. You can be talented and still make terrible money decisions. You can understand numbers and still lose because your emotions are in control. So you have a choice. You can let panic run your money, or you can let discipline run your money. Stay calm. Stay calm. Stay calm. Because panic destroys good decisions. Panic makes people chase hype. Panic makes people sell too early. Panic makes people borrow for image. Panic makes people invest from fear instead of strategy. Panic makes people confuse motion with progress, and that is how money disappears. Not always through one giant mistake, often through repeated emotional behavior. Think long term. That's the key. The person who wins financially is often not the one who gets rich fast. It is the one who stays steady long enough for time to work. They save, they invest, they wait, they avoid emotional decisions, they ignore the pressure to look rich, they focus on staying wealthy instead of appearing wealthy. That is a completely different mindset. A real-world example makes this obvious. One person makes money and immediately flexes. New clothes, new car, new lifestyle. They want people to see the success before the success is stable. They gamble with leverage. They chase quick gains. They enter deals they do not understand because they want speed and status. Then something shifts. The market changes. The deal fails. The income slows. The ego gets exposed, and the money is gone. Another person moves slowly. They budget. They invest carefully. They avoid noise. They build over years, not days. They do not need applause. They do not need to prove they are winning. They let time do the heavy lifting. While other people are trying to impress, this person is trying to endure, and enduring is what grows wealth. Behavior beats brilliance. Say it again. Behavior beats brilliance. A brilliant person who cannot control impulses will lose to a disciplined person who can stay calm. A smart person who panics is dangerous to their own future. A patient person with average intelligence often ends up ahead because they can wait, think, and act wisely. That is not luck. That is discipline. You don't need their permission to manage your money differently. You do not need to follow the crowd. You do not need to copy people who are already stressed, broke, and pretending. You need restraint. You need consistency. You need a calm mind when money starts talking loudly. It's not about how fast you can get money. It's about discipline. It's not about how much you flex. It's about discipline. It's not about winning this week. It's about discipline. That's the key. Ask yourself harder questions. Why am I buying this? Why am I rushing this? Why am I following this crowd? Why am I emotional about money? If the answer is ego, stop. If the answer is fear, pause. If the answer is pressure, breathe. Your money needs better decisions, not louder excuses. Build habits that support patience. Automate savings. Research before investing. Avoid debts that feed image. Separate emotional wants from financial needs. Learn to delay gratification. Learn to let opportunities mature. Learn to stay in the game long enough to benefit from time. That is what wealthy behavior looks like. Not drama, not panic, not impulse. Patience. You have a choice. You can let your ego spend your future, or you can let discipline protect it. That is the difference between people who build wealth and people who perform wealth. One chases applause, the other protects progress. One reacts, the other thinks long-term. Stay calm. Think long-term. Behavior beats brilliance. Repeat those lines until they become your financial instinct. Because money is not only about making more, it is about keeping more, growing more, protecting more. And only calm, disciplined behavior can do that consistently. And when you understand that money rewards patience, not panic, you stop treating every financial move like an emergency and start treating it like a long game. That is how wealth becomes real. That is how control is built. Now let's move to the next level.
Chapter 8. Discomfort is the entry fee for greatness. Comfort is the enemy. Comfort makes you weak. Comfort makes you soft. Comfort makes you delay the very work that would save your future. And if you keep choosing comfort over challenge, you will keep getting the same small life with a bigger excuse attached to it. That is the truth. That is the key. Greatness does not come from avoiding pain. Greatness comes from facing pain and refusing to flinch. You have a choice. You can stay protected inside your excuses, or you can step into the discomfort that builds strength. Can't hurt me is a brutal reminder that growth does not happen in comfort. It happens in pressure. It happens in fatigue. It happens in the moment your mind says stop and you keep going anyway. It happens when you do the uncomfortable thing before you feel ready. That's the key. Stay hard. Stay hard. Stay hard. Because weakness is expensive. Weakness costs time. Weakness costs confidence. Weakness costs opportunities. Weakness costs respect. Every time you dodge discomfort, you pay for it later. Every time you quit early, you make the future heavier. Every time you choose easy now, you make hard later. Weakness is expensive. A strong person is not the person who never feels resistance. A strong person is the person who moves through resistance without begging for rescue.
That is what this chapter demands from you. Not inspiration, not hype, not motivational noise. Discipline, repetition, mental toughness. Look at the person who wakes early before the world starts making demands. The alarm rings, the room is cold, the body is tired, the mind starts negotiating. Just 5 more minutes, just 1 more hour, I'll do it later. That is the battle, and the battle is won or lost in private. The person who gets up anyway is already building something most people will never have. Not just a routine, not just a habit, a stronger identity. Do the uncomfortable thing. Do the uncomfortable thing. Do the uncomfortable thing. That person works when motivation is absent. They train when the body complains. They study when distraction feels easier. They keep going when the task gets boring. They do not make comfort the boss. They make discipline the boss. That is where toughness is built. Not in speeches, in repetition. You don't need their permission to become harder to break. You do not need people clapping for you while you suffer through the work. You do not need approval to improve your standards. You need to face the part of the day you keep avoiding and push through it on purpose. That is the training. A lot of people call discomfort unfair. They say life is too hard. They say it is too much. They say they are tired. They say they need a break. And sometimes they do. But most of the time they are not exhausted. They are uncomfortable. And they are mistaking discomfort for danger. It is not danger. It is development. It's not about pain. It's about discipline. It's not about suffering. It's about discipline. It's not about feeling ready. It's about discipline. That's the key. You want toughness? Earn it. You want confidence? Build it through repetition. You want a stronger mind? Put it under pressure and refuse to collapse. The gym, the study table, the business, the early morning, the difficult conversation, the difficult task, these are all training grounds. These are not punishments. These are upgrades. Every time you choose the harder path on purpose, you become less fragile. Every time you stay in the discomfort a little longer, you become more dangerous. Every time you stop running from resistance, you stop being ruled by fear. Stay hard. Do the uncomfortable thing. Weakness is expensive. Repeat those lines until they become policy in your life. Because the world does not owe you ease. The world rewards strength. It rewards the person who can handle pressure without breaking. It rewards the person who can keep going after the mood disappears. It rewards the person who does not fold when things get rough. You have a choice. Continue protecting your comfort and shrinking your potential, or embrace discomfort as the price of a stronger future. That is the path. That is the standard. That is the work. And when you understand that discomfort is the entry fee for greatness, you stop fearing challenge and start using it. That is how the book keeps building you. That is how you become harder, sharper, and more capable. Now let's move into the next lesson.
Chapter 9. Build fast, learn faster, adjust faster. Perfection is a delay tactic. That is the truth. That is the trap. That is why so many ambitious people stay stuck in planning while life keeps moving without them. You have a choice. You can keep polishing an idea until the moment passes, or you can launch early, learn fast, and improve in motion. That's the key. The Lean Startup is not a book about being sloppy. It is a book about being smart with reality. It teaches that you do not need to predict everything before you begin. You do not need to build the perfect product, write the perfect plan, or wait for the perfect moment. You need feedback. You need motion. You need results from the real world. Launch early. Launch early. Launch early. Because the longer you hide behind planning, the longer you avoid the truth. And the truth is where growth lives. The market will tell you what works. People will tell you what matters. Results will tell you what needs to change. But only if you move, only if you release something, only if you stop pretending readiness is a feeling you must wait for. That is the lesson. Ambitious people often waste time trying to avoid mistakes, but mistakes are not always the enemy. Uncertainty is not always the enemy. The real enemy is silence. The real enemy is never testing. The real enemy is building in private forever and never learning from the world. That is how people lose years, not because they were incapable, because they were too afraid to be corrected. Learn fast. Learn fast. Learn fast. A real entrepreneur does not worship the first version. They study it. They measure it. They ask what happened. They see what customers ignored, what they liked, what confused them, what converted, what failed. Then they adjust. That is not weakness. That is wisdom. That is speed with intelligence. That is progress. Think about the person who spends 6 months planning the perfect business, the perfect brand, the perfect offer, the perfect launch, and then still does nothing because something does not feel ready. That person is not building. That person is hiding. Now compare them to the person who releases a rough version, watches the response, fixes the weak points, and improves again. That person learns faster, and the one who learns faster usually wins. That's the key. Improve in motion. Improve in motion. Improve in motion. That means you do not sit still waiting for clarity. You move, then you get clarity. You do not wait for confidence to arrive. You build confidence through evidence. You do not wait for perfection to appear. You create progress by testing, adjusting, and repeating. You don't need their permission to start small. You don't need approval to make the first version better later. You don't need the whole blueprint in your hand before taking one step. You need courage. You need humility. You need discipline enough to accept feedback without collapsing. It's not about being perfect. It's about discipline. It's not about looking ready. It's about discipline. It's not about knowing everything. It's about discipline. That's the key. The entrepreneur who launches, measures, adapts, and keeps improving is not guessing forever. They are learning through action. They are building real intelligence. They are making the market their teacher. And the market is honest. It does not care about your feelings. It rewards what works. This is how ambitious people move ahead. They stop romanticizing the first idea and start refining the real one. They stop waiting for certainty and start creating evidence. They stop treating mistakes like death and start treating them like data. That is speed. That is leverage. That is growth. So build, then listen, then change, then build again. Release, measure, adjust, repeat. That cycle is powerful because it saves time and creates momentum. Progress beats perfection. Progress beats perfection. Progress beats perfection. Say it until it changes the way you work. Because the world does not reward the person with the most beautiful plan. It rewards the person who turns ideas into motion and motion into results. That is what matters. That is what scales. That is what lasts. You have a choice. Stay trapped in endless preparation or build fast, learn faster, and adjust faster. That is the discipline. That is the standard. That is the move. And when you understand that speed of learning matters more than pretending to be ready, you stop hiding and start improving. That is how ideas become outcomes. That is how ambition becomes execution. Now let's finish with the final lesson. Chapter 10. Build leverage, not just hustle.
Chapter 10. Leverage beats hustle every time. Working hard matters. Discipline matters. Consistency matters. But if all you ever do is trade your time for money, you eventually hit a wall. That is the truth. That is the lesson. That is the difference between hustle and leverage.
You have a choice. You can spend your whole life working harder just to stay in the same place, or you can build leverage. That's the key. The Almanac of Naval Ravikant teaches something ambitious people need to hear early. Exhaustion is not the goal. Burnout is not the goal. Being busy every second is not the goal. The goal is freedom. The goal is ownership. The goal is building something once and allowing it to keep working beyond your direct effort. Build leverage. Build leverage. Build leverage. Because leverage changes everything. Leverage is knowledge that compounds. Leverage is ownership in what you create. Leverage is systems that continue running after you stop touching them. Leverage is code. Leverage is media. Leverage is a product. Leverage is a brand. Leverage is a skill so valuable that it multiplies your earning power over time. Leverage is not doing more random work. It is doing the right work in a way that scales. That's the key. Look at one person who trades every single hour for money. They work longer to earn more. If they stop, income stops. If they get tired, progress slows. If they need rest, everything pauses. Their effort matters, their discipline matters, but their time has become the ceiling. Now compare that to the person who builds leverage. They spend time learning deeply. They create a digital product. They write content once and it keeps reaching people. They build a system that runs without constant supervision. They own part of a company. They develop a skill and position it so opportunities keep coming. Their effort still matters, their discipline still matters, but now their work multiplies. Their output keeps moving long after the initial work is done. Work once, benefit many times. Say it again. Work once, benefit many times. That is not laziness. That is intelligence with discipline. That is strategy. That is long-term ambition. A lot of people worship hustle because hustle looks impressive. Late nights, constant pressure, no rest, always busy, always moving. But movement alone does not create freedom. Exhaustion is not proof of progress. Activity is not always impact. It's not about looking busy. It's about discipline. It's not about working more hours. It's about discipline. It's not about hustle for applause. It's about discipline. That's the key. Own the upside. Own the upside. Own the upside. That means stop only asking, how can I get paid today? Ask bigger questions. What can I build that continues working tomorrow? What can I own? What skill can I sharpen until it becomes leverage? What system can I create? What audience can I build? What asset can keep producing value? Because ownership changes your relationship with effort. When you own part of what you build, your work has room to multiply. When you create systems, your time becomes more valuable. When you build leverage, you stop depending on constant output just to survive. You don't need their permission to think bigger. You don't need their permission to stop glorifying burnout. You don't need their permission to create smarter systems and protect your future. You need clarity, you need patience, you need discipline. And that discipline matters because leverage takes time. The first version may feel slow. The first audience may feel small. The first product may feel imperfect. But remember what you learned earlier. Launch early, learn fast, improve in motion, then let leverage compound. That is how ambitious people become powerful without becoming trapped. That is how freedom becomes real. That is how discipline becomes scale. You have a choice. Stay in the cycle of trading every hour for survival, or build leverage through knowledge, ownership, systems, and long-term thinking. Build leverage. Own the upside. Work once, benefit many times. Repeat those until they become part of how you think, because this is the bigger picture behind every book in this audiobook. Money matters, but discipline matters more. Habits matter. Responsibility matters. Focus matters. People matter.
Patience matters, discomfort matters, execution matters, and leverage ties them all together. It turns discipline into freedom. It turns ambition into ownership. It turns effort into something that can outlive the moment. That is the final lesson. That is the bigger vision. That is how ambitious people stop chasing every opportunity and start building lives they actually control. You have the books. You have the lessons. You have the choice. Now build something real. Now the message is clear. The people who win before 30 are not the luckiest, not the smartest, and not the most gifted. They are the ones who read, who apply, who repeat, and who refuse to stay average. 1 book can sharpen your mind. 10 books can change your direction, but only action can change your life. So do not leave this here. Pick 1 lesson, start today, build the habit, protect your focus, strengthen your mind, and stop waiting for a perfect moment that will never come. Your future is being decided by what you do next. Take this seriously. Like the video and subscribe to Mindshift Audiobooks for more transformative lessons that will push you to think bigger, move faster, and win with discipline.